Have you ever wondered why people do things that seem completely irrational? Why a rational person would pay $50 for a free t-shirt? Why doctors prescribe unnecessary tests? Why your coworker works harder when the boss is watching but slacks off when he's not? Here's what nobody talks about. None of these behaviors are irrational. They're perfectly rational, once you understand the incentives. Because here's the thing. Incentives don't just influence behavior, they control it. They're invisible puppet strings pulling everyone in directions they don't even realize they're moving. Here at Simple Money, we've spent years watching how people make financial decisions. And what we've discovered is both fascinating and kind of terrifying. Because once you see how incentives shape behavior, you can't unsee it. You see it everywhere. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how financial incentives control human behavior. And more importantly, how understanding this changes everything about how you make decisions with money. Here's what's really happening. Most people think they make rational decisions. You weigh the pros and cons. You consider your options. You choose what's best for you. But that's not how it actually works. Not even close. What actually drives your decisions are incentives, rewards and punishments, carrots and sticks, the invisible forces that make certain choices feel obvious and others feel impossible. And here's the crucial part. The incentives that control your behavior aren't always obvious. They're often hidden. Sometimes, they're the complete opposite of what you think they are. Think about a car salesman. You walk into a dealership looking for a reliable used car. Good gas mileage, low maintenance, something that'll last 10 years. The salesman seems helpful, friendly. He's showing you different options, explaining features, answering questions. But here's what you don't see. He gets a bigger commission on certain cars. The ones with higher profit margins. The ones the dealership needs to move off the lot. So when he says, yeah, this model is great, but have you considered this other one? He's not helping you. He's following his incentives. Because his incentives aren't aligned with yours. Your incentive is to get the best car for your money. His incentive is to maximize his commission. And here's the thing. He's not being evil. He's not trying to screw you over. He's just responding to incentives. Like everyone does. Like you do. Like I do. This is the first big lesson about incentives. They're more powerful than ethics, morals, or good intentions. When incentives push one way and values push another, incentives win. Almost every time. Let me show you how this plays out. The first pattern is what I call the misaligned incentive trap. This happens when the person making decisions for you has different incentives than you do. And it's everywhere once you start looking. Financial advisors who earn commissions on the products they sell. They might genuinely want to help you. But if they make more money by putting you in high-fee mutual funds instead of low-cost index funds, which one do you think they'll recommend? Real estate agents who get paid a percentage of the sale price. Their incentive is to sell your house quickly at the highest price. But those two goals conflict. A higher price usually means waiting longer. So what do agents do? They push you to accept lower offers. Because a quick sale at 95% of asking price gets them paid now. Holding out for 100% means more work, more time, more risk that the deal falls through. Doctors who get paid more for ordering tests and procedures. Your incentive is to get healthy with the least invasive, least expensive treatment. Their incentive is to generate revenue for their practice and protect themselves from lawsuits. Now, I'm not saying these people are bad. Most of them genuinely want to help. But incentives are powerful. When someone's paycheck depends on them not understanding something, they usually won't understand it. And here's the scary part. You do this too. Everyone does. You work harder when your boss is watching because your incentive is to appear productive. You care more about projects that affect your performance review than ones that don't. You focus on metrics that are measured, even if they're not the most important things. We all respond to incentives, even when we don't realize we're doing it, especially when we don't realize we're doing it. The second pattern is what I call the Cobra effect. This is when an incentive meant to solve a problem actually makes it worse. The name comes from a real story. During British rule in India, the government was worried about venomous cobras in Delhi, so they offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Makes sense, right? Pay people to kill cobras, fewer cobras. Problem solved. Except people started breeding cobras to kill them for the bounty. When the government realized this and canceled the program, the breeders released all their now worthless cobras. The cobra population ended up larger than before. This happens constantly with financial incentives, and the consequences are huge. Take Wells Fargo. They wanted employees to sell more products, so they created aggressive sales quotas. Employees who didn't meet quotas got fired. Employees who exceeded quotas got bonuses and recognition. What happened? Employees opened millions of fake accounts, without customer knowledge, without customer consent, because the incentive wasn't to help customers. It was to hit numbers, or consider teaching. Many schools tie teacher pay and funding to standardized test scores. Seems reasonable. Reward good teaching outcomes. Except what actually happens? Teachers teach to the test. They focus only on tested subjects. Some even cheat, changing student answers. Because their incentive isn't to educate children well. It's to generate high test scores. Here's the thing about incentives. They don't create the behavior you want. They create the behavior they reward. And people are incredibly creative at gaming systems to get rewards while avoiding the actual work. If you pay programmers by lines of code, you get bloated, inefficient code. If you pay writers by the word, you get verbose, padded writing. If you pay call center workers by calls per hour, you get short, unhelpful calls. You get what you incentivize, not what you want, what you incentivize. The third pattern is the delayed consequence trap. This happens when the incentive is immediate but the consequence is delayed. And this might be the most dangerous pattern of all, because human brains are terrible at delayed gratification. We're built to prioritize immediate rewards over future consequences. It's evolutionary. In the ancestral environment, immediate rewards meant survival. Future planning was less important than eating the food in front of you today. But in the modern world, this creates massive problems. Credit cards are a perfect example. The incentive to spend is immediate. You get the thing you want right now. The consequence, the payment, comes later. Sometimes, much later. So people overspend. Not because they're stupid, but because the incentive structure is designed to make them overspend. Buy now, pay later is an incentive system optimized to separate you from your money. Or take corporate executives. They're often compensated with stock options that vest over a few years. Their incentive is to boost the stock price in the short term, even if it damages the company long term. So they cut research and development, they lay off experienced workers, they take on risky debt for stock buybacks. All of this can boost stock prices temporarily. By the time the long-term damage becomes clear, they've already cashed out and moved on. The incentive is immediate. The consequence is delayed. The behavior is predictable. This is why you eat junk food even though you know it's unhealthy. Why you skip workouts even though you know exercise is important. Why you don't save for retirement even though you know you should. The incentive for the unhealthy choice is immediate pleasure. The consequence is future pain. And immediate always beats future in your brain, unless you consciously design systems to override that instinct. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because there's a fourth pattern that most people never recognize. It's what I call the hidden incentive. These are incentives you don't see. Incentives that are so embedded in systems that they become invisible. But they're controlling behavior anyway. Let me give you an example that'll blow your mind. Why do houses keep getting more expensive? Everyone says it's supply and demand. Not enough houses, too many buyers, prices go up. But here's what nobody talks about. Local governments fund themselves largely through property taxes. Higher property values mean more tax revenue, without raising tax rates. So what's their incentive? To keep housing prices high and rising, not to make housing affordable. Zoning laws that restrict new construction? They keep prices high, good for tax revenue. Regulations that make building expensive? Same thing. Policies that favor existing homeowners over new buyers? All of it serves the same hidden incentive. The government says they want affordable housing, but their incentive is for expensive housing. And incentives beat intentions. Or consider college. Universities keep raising tuition. Why? Because they can. Federal student loan programs mean students can borrow almost unlimited amounts, so universities have no incentive to control costs. They have an incentive to raise prices. Because the money is available, students will pay, and the university gets more revenue. If students couldn't borrow as much, universities would have to lower prices or lose students. But with unlimited loans, the incentive is to charge more, spend more on fancy facilities and administrators, and raise prices every year. Again, the stated goal is to make education accessible, but the incentive structure does the opposite. This is the uncomfortable truth about incentives. The stated purpose of a system is often completely different from what the system actually incentivizes, and behavior follows incentives, not intentions. Let me tell you about two people who learned this lesson very differently. Meet David. David was a middle manager at a large company. Smart guy, worked hard, did his job well. His company introduced a new performance review system. Employees were ranked on a curve. Top 20% got big bonuses. Bottom 20% got put on performance improvement plans. David thought, okay, I just need to do good work. That's what performance reviews are for, right? Reward good performance. So he focused on his projects. He helped his team succeed. He collaborated across departments. He did everything he thought a good manager should do. Come review time, David was ranked in the middle. No bonus, no recognition. He was confused. He'd done everything right. What David didn't understand was the incentive structure. His peers weren't being evaluated on absolute performance. They were being evaluated relative to each other. So what were his coworkers doing? They were making themselves look good by making others look bad. They took credit for shared work. They highlighted others' mistakes in meetings. They competed instead of collaborated. Because the incentive wasn't to do good work, the incentive was to look better than everyone else. David kept trying to win by doing good work. He kept losing. He couldn't figure out why. Eventually, he got frustrated and quit. Now let me tell you about Michelle. Michelle worked at the same company, same system, same forced rankings. But Michelle understood incentives. She knew the system wasn't rewarding good work. It was rewarding visible success relative to peers. So she played a different game. She made sure her boss saw every win. She volunteered for high-visibility projects, even if they weren't the most impactful. She documented everything that made her look good. And crucially, she avoided situations where her success depended on others succeeding. Because other people's success was a threat to her ranking. Was this good for the company? No. Did it encourage collaboration? No. Did it reward actual performance? Not really. But it was what the system incentivized. Michelle got promoted. David didn't. Here's what most people don't realize. The game you think you're playing is not always the game you're actually playing. David thought he was playing the good work game. But the actual game was relative performance. And he didn't know the rules. Michelle understood the rules. She won, not because she was a better worker, but because she understood the incentive structure and optimized for what was actually rewarded. Now, you might be thinking, that's cynical. That's depressing. We should just fix the incentives, make them align with good outcomes. And you're right, we should. But here's the thing. You rarely control the incentive structures around you. What you can control is whether you understand them. Because once you understand incentives, you see the world differently. You stop being confused by irrational behavior. You see that it's not irrational at all. It's just responding to incentives you didn't see. Why do pharmaceutical companies spend more on marketing than research? Because the incentive is profit, and marketing drives sales more efficiently than new drug development. Why do social media platforms maximize engagement over well-being? Because their revenue comes from attention, and outrage drives more attention than happiness. Why does your gym have an annual membership instead of pay per visit? Because they make money from people who don't show up. Their incentive is for you to sign up, not to actually use the gym. None of this is irrational. It's all perfectly rational. Once you understand the incentives, and here's the most important part. Once you understand how incentives shape behavior, you can use this knowledge. First, you can design better incentives in your own life. Want to exercise more? Create immediate rewards for going to the gym. Pay yourself $5 every time you work out. Make the incentive immediate, not delayed. Want to save money? Automate transfers to savings on payday. Remove the decision. Make not saving harder than saving. Change your incentive structure. Want your kids to do chores? Don't pay them for each chore. That incentivizes them to negotiate and minimize effort. Give them an allowance tied to overall responsibility. That incentivizes different behavior. Second, you can protect yourself from bad incentive structures. When someone gives you advice, ask yourself, what's their incentive? How do they make money? What's their bias? That financial advisor pushing whole life insurance? Check their commission structure. That real estate agent saying you should accept the offer? Remember, they get paid on closing, not on getting you the best price. Understanding incentives doesn't make you cynical. It makes you informed. It helps you make better decisions. It prevents you from being manipulated by systems designed to extract value from you. Third, you can avoid creating bad incentives for others. If you're a manager, be careful what metrics you use. If you're a parent, be thoughtful about how you reward behavior. If you're starting a business, design incentives that actually drive the outcomes you want. Because here's the thing about incentives. They're neutral. They're tools. They can be used well or poorly. They can align interests or create conflicts. They can drive incredible outcomes or perverse ones. The problem isn't incentives themselves. The problem is misunderstanding them, ignoring them, pretending they don't matter. Acting like good intentions are enough. They're not. Incentives shape behavior. Always. In every situation. For everyone. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, said it best. Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome. That's not cynical. That's just accurate. People respond to incentives. Companies respond to incentives. Governments respond to incentives. Systems respond to incentives. If you want to understand behavior, understand incentives. If you want to predict outcomes, look at incentive structures. If you want to change results, change incentives. This might be the most important financial lesson you ever learn. Not how to pick stocks, not how to budget, not even how to make more money, but how to see the invisible forces that shape every financial decision you and everyone around you makes. How incentives control behavior, including yours. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and that's when everything changes.